Hey, you don't like bacon, bonjour, said Grandpa. It's just bread and saltfish. It's cool, said Gregory. I'm just not hungry.
Everything you did has already been done. I know all the tricks from bricks to Kingston.
Hi, Elijah. How are you? Are you ready to read our story for this week? What are we reading this week? This week we're going to read Gregory Cool by Caroline Bitch. Right, let's go. I'm just going to sit next to you. Yeah, come sit on my lap. Okay, there's our book. Ready? Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to read this lovely story called Gregory Cool by Caroline Binch. I used to read this when I was younger, so I'm going to read it to Elijah. I hope you can listen too. Gregory, you're just like your photos, cried Granny. Is your granny got to kiss you at last, as here your grandpa? My, we're so pleased to have you home, Grandpa said. Sitting in the taxi from the airport, squashed tightly between his grandparents, Gregory wished he was back at home with his mum and dad. Why did he have to come to Tobago? The air was stifling and the strange smells disturbed him. Gregory shut his eyes. All of a sudden, he felt very tired. The taxi stopped outside a very small house. Do you really live here? Asked Gregory. Granny and Grandpa just laughed as they took inside and showed him his room. The last he saw before he fell asleep was a lizard looking down at him from the ceiling. Gregory woke up the next morning with just a sheet over him. It was hot. Sun poured in through the open window. There was no toys, no books, no carpet, not even a proper door. Gregory scratched at his arms. Something had bitten him during the night. Was he really expected to stay here for 4 weeks? In the kitchen, Granny was cooking breakfast and Grandpa sat at the small table with a boy Gregory hadn't seen before. This must be his cousin. His mum had told him about Lennox and how he lived with Granny and Grandpa. Good morning, Gregory! They all smiled at him. Come and have some food, boy. Then Lennox will show you around, said Granny. Gregory sat down and looked at his breakfast plate. Scrambled egg, he can deal with that. But it wasn't eggs. Gregory spluttered "Blah!" and spat out that salty stuff as politely as he could. Hey, you don't like bacon, bonjour, said Grandpa. It's just bread and saltfish. It's cool, said Gregory. I'm just not hungry. He drank a glass of fruit juice and followed Lennox outside. Lennox was a year older than Gregory, but much smaller. What do you do around here? Asked Gregory. You got a bike? Lennox grinned shyly at him. He had bare feet. Gregory looked at them, then quickly looked away. Come, I'll show you the river, said Lennox. The air was shimmering hot. Gregory sat down in the shade. I'd rather stay here, he said. It's cool. Well, I'll go through the goats and then dip in the river, said Lennox, and off he ran. Gregory watched him go. Didn't want to play with him anyway, he thought. How can he move so fast in the heat? He stretched out flat and dreamed of hamburgers. But supper that evening turned out to be meat so hot and spicy he could only eat the rice on his plate. The next day was worse, even hotter, more itchy insect bites, and still nothing to do, not even a TV to watch. Gregory thought about going to feed the goats with Lennox, but changed his mind. He wouldn't know how, so instead he sat in the yard and played with his pocket video game until Lennox had come back. He offered Lennox a game. Man, this is boss, laughed Lennox. You're letting them beat you, said Gregory. Let me show you. But Lennox jumped up and left, saying, You sure know it all, Gregory. You think you was cool. Granny appeared carrying a big basket. Right now, children, she said. Grandpa and me is going to take you for a sea bath. Wicked, shouted Lennox, leaping around the yard. Cool, said Gregory politely. Cool was the last thing he felt, but he wasn't going to say so. At least he might get a fizzy drink and an ice lolly at the beach. The bus they caught was like an oven crammed with people. When they finally got there, the beach had palm trees and sand, just like a travel poster. But there wasn't anywhere to get ice cream or chips, and Gregory had missed out on breakfast again, so he was feeling very, very hungry. Lennox rushed off, cartwheeling along the sand. Gregory started after him. What was there to get excited about? The sea looked warm, blue and a bit rough. Gregory was a good swimmer, and he jumped into the waves with a shout. Suddenly, something he saw made him freeze. Sharks! He started swimming for his life. Then he reached the shore. He was spluttering and shaking with fright. Sharks! Oh no, they're not sharks, said Granny comfortingly. They're dolphins. Look, see, the dolphins is our best sea friend. Grandpa was chuckling. Lennox fell about laughing. You are a fool, Gregory. You're no cool. Gregory stomped up. The sun was blazing over his head, and the sand was so hot under his bare feet, and he had to run. 2 fishermen called him over, opened a coconut, and offered him a drink. Cool, said Gregory. Thanks. Hey, one of them said. What's your name? Gregory, he told them. I'm staying with my granny and grandpa. What you doing with yourself then? You been swimming? Yeah, said Gregory. I thought I saw some sharks, but they were just dolphins, so it was cool. Friendly sharks, hey? You got to watch them, they said, grinning. Gregory couldn't help but smile too. One of the fishermen wrapped a big red fish in a leaf. Here, Gregory called. Take this to your granny and come out fishing with us soon. Gregory was grinning when he presented his parcel to Granny. My, what a lovely fish, Gregory, said Granny, giving him a hug. Tonight we have a big fish fry. Now sit down and eat something. Why? The picnic was fried chicken, sweet bread, fruit and biscuit. It tasted good. But now Gregory was feeling thirsty again. Got any coconut to drink? He asked. Easy, said Lennox. He went straight up to the coconut tree, no trouble at all. It did look easy, but when Gregory tried, the trunk was far too small and smooth for him to climb. Grandpa took one look at the young coconuts Lennox brought down and opened it with a machete. It was full of juice. Said Gregory, drinking it with one gulp. Suddenly he felt like swimming. Hey Lennox, I'm a shark, he said. Yay, shouted Lennox, and I'm a massive stingray. The boys jumped into the water together, leaping and splashing. Dusk fell back at Granny's house. Lennox took Gregory up the hill to watch the moon rise. Gregory kicked off his trainers. He wanted to be barefoot too. Below them, the lights came on, one by one, in small wooden houses. People called to each other. Music played on a radio and someone started to sing. Insects whirled, dogs barked and donkey brayed. Look at the candle flies, said Lennox, and Gregory noticed tiny lights moving all around them. Gregory, maybe Tobago was going to be all right after all. Granny called up from the house. Gregory, Lennox, food ready? Okay, said Gregory. Cool, Greg. And mighty Lennox, we're coming. Granny laughed as they raced down the track together. Lennox shouted, yes, you're cool, Gregory. You're real cool. And that was the end of the story. Did you enjoy that, Elijah? Well, hi guys. I hope you enjoyed that book too. That was one of my favorite books. Just look at the illustrations. They are so phenomenal and very detailed and look just like some of you. Now join me here next week to find out what book we're going to choose next. And if you have any suggestions of what books we should choose, definitely put that in the comments below. See you next week. Bye.